Hello YouTube, Gorod Radio Mosca here again with another beer review for you as usual. Now as promised in my last videos, we're going to take a look at one of the Heidelberg craft breweries today. As I've mentioned in my last videos, we have three, arguably four breweries here in Heidelberg. The big one being the Heidelberger Brewery, who they distribute their beer all throughout Germany. Then you have the two small craft breweries in the Altstadt of the city, the old town. You have the Vetters Brewery, who are on the same street as the old bridge, and then you have the Kulturbrauerei, and just in the Ziegelhausen district, which is maybe just a kilometre or so away from the Altstadt, you have the Klosterhof Brewery, which is attached to the Neuberg monastery up there on the hill, of course. But today we're going to have a look at the Kulturbrauerei, and this is their Winterbock, or their Weihnachtsbock, their Christmas seasonal beer basically, and it's really nice. I've tried this guy on tap when I went for a tour of the brewery. So as you can see, this is the bottle here, and as is usual with a lot of German craft beers, this comes in one of these big monster 1 litre bottles. You maybe saw this if you've been subscribed to my channel for a long time. I did the Zwiebel Brauerei, and they put their beer in the same bottles. It's quite common for craft breweries to do this, but you can actually also get this guy in 2 litre bottles as well. This, you can see the size of this guy here. This is a big 2 litre monster of a thing. I borrowed this from a friend who also went on the brewery tour with me here. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll just take you through a brief history of the brewery. This one's a very short one actually, so you can stick with me if you want for this, but as I always say, you can go towards the second half of the video and check out the tasting if that's all you're interested in. But as I mentioned to you before, this is one of the two small breweries in Heidelberg, and this is located at the eastern end of the Hauptstrasse, the main street in Heidelberg, and the street that this brewery is actually on is called the Leiergasse. You have to just look down the little side streets here when you pass it. You'll see a sort of statue on top of one of the buildings there, and just a little sign with this symbol on it here, and that's when you know you've hit the brewery. Just keep an eye out for it if you're walking along Hauptstrasse towards the east. Just keep looking left all the time, and you'll see this this little symbol here hanging from one of the buildings, of course, there. But the building in which this brewery is located actually has quite a bit of history behind it. It's referred to as the Wirtschaftshof, which it basically means, it literally translates to farmyard. But this building used to supply the castle with all their necessary goods back until the year 1235. But there isn't a mention of exactly when the brewery started brewing beer, the Kulturbrauerei. But the Schaff family brewed their beer here for several generations during the 18th and 19th century. But the building also used to be a malt house for the Zum Seppel tavern, amongst many others in the city. This is a very popular student pub these days. But they actually have their brew pub, which is a really beautiful building, and it's got nice hardwood tables. It's a very, very traditional German sort of brew pub thing. I highly recommend that if you come to Heidelberg, definitely take a look at it, and it's right in the sort of the midst of the castle, if you like. You can just look up on the hill when you walk down the street to this guy and see the castle. Really, really beautiful town here, right in the middle of Frankfurt and Stuttgart. Definitely come and visit it if you are in this part of Germany, of course. But you can get tours of the brewery as well, and this is what I did. 160 euros for 20 people. If you want more information on that, check out the video description here. I've got the link to the brewery in the video description there, so check them out if you are interested. But they also have a hotel where you can stay if you're visiting Heidelberg, and it actually has very, very good ratings. And as I mentioned, it's right in the heart of the old town here, just below the castle, so a really beautiful location if you're staying in the city here. But since 2011 as well, the Kulturbrauerei have actually owned the Zum Seppel tavern, which I mentioned a minute ago, one of the very popular student pubs in the city. And apparently this building has been a restaurant since the 17th century, and in the older days it used to have its own brewery as well, but now they sell the Kulturbrauerei's beer, of course. But this brewery actually has a completely modern facility with state-of-the-art equipment, and they use a mix of German, American and New Zealand hops. And the head brewer Jürgen actually told us that the attraction to using New Zealand hops is the fact that they have no natural competitors in New Zealand, so they grow very, very well, and plus the fact they give a little bit of variety to a sort of German and American dominated market, if you like. Obviously when you have different soils and different locations around the world, different minerals and stuff there, so the hops will take up different minerals and stuff like that, and you'll get a bit of a different flavour out of them, of course. But all of their German hops actually come from the Tettnanger or Hallertau regions in Germany, of course, very, very famous for their hop production. And their American hops, I believe he said, came from the Yakima Valley, amongst others in America. But they actually use the hop pellets rather than flour hops because they say that it's easier to extract the flavour from these and they work better in the process. But I believe these things are just sort of air pressure, and they're really little square things just about this size. And then we actually ate one of them and it was very, very dry and very bitter, but an interesting thing to do, of course. But all their beers, of course, are unpasteurised and unfiltered, and this gives them a more natural and fresher flavour. And of course, all their beer is brewed in accordance with the Reinheitsgebot, or the German purity law of 1516 that originally came from Bavaria, I believe. But just to let you have a little closer look at the label on this guy, I think officially this beer is called Scheffel's Weihnachtsbock, but it's from the Kulturbrauerei. Of course, I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little closer look at the label on the bottle here. I believe Scheffel might be one of the Schaff family who owned this brewery at one point, maybe a nickname for him there. I don't think that was his first name, but I'll ask about that the next time I go into the brewery. Of course, as I mentioned, this is one of their seasonal beers. This is their Christmas seasonal one, and you can't actually get this one anymore at this point. This is February the 19th that I'm filming this video for you, and it's actually changed to the porter beer now. So they'd have this beer. They always do their Helles beer, and they always do their Hefeweizen beer, but their seasonal beer changes all the time, and at the moment in February, I believe up until May, it's the porter. But this is the Winterbock, which I think came in from November till the end of January. So interesting one here. But let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. This one is a 6.4% Dunkelbock beer, as they've described it on their website, and as I say, you can check that out if you want to. It's in the video description, of course. But let's get this guy open and see how we get on. So you can see a nice smoky opening there, as you would expect from the darker beers. Of course, you tend to get a bit more smoke from the darker beers. But let's get this guy out and into the glass. So you can see a nice off-white head forming on this guy here, a nice sort of chestnutty colour we're getting out of this guy. As you can see, put a nice big sort of German rounded head on it, of course. But there we are. We'll just set this guy down, and I think that'll be enough beer just for me just now, just to take you through the tasting there. Close the guy up and I'll finish the rest of it off later. But as you can see, it's a beautiful sort of, it's actually quite a red colour, and probably a chestnut colour is actually very, very good to describe this one. There's a lot of carbonation coming up on this one, a lot more so since it's been put in the bottle actually than it did when it was on tap. As you can see, a nice sort of finger and a half of an off-white head there. It's quite a yellowish head on this one actually, and it's quite bumpy, but there is a good bit of foamy character to it as well, but a lot of little bubbles streaming up to the top there, and you can see them just sort of impeding on the head there. But a really nice sort of chestnutty looking beer. In terms of the aroma of this guy, it's a very malty aroma. You've got a nice dose of brown sugar in there. There's quite a bit of roasted character as well, as you would expect with a sort of bock beer, but nice brown sugar and roasted character there. Perhaps some sort of sweet biscuity malt as well, maybe just a little hint of spice actually. But yeah, there's a little hint of dark fruits, but it's mainly the roasty character and the sort of sweet biscuity and bready malts there. Really nice dark roasted malt beer. But let's give this guy a taste and see how we get on. Yeah, it's actually quite a very, very sweet malty beer. But it's as you would expect, a very malty taste. It's got some nice roasted brown sugars in there. The red fruits are actually pushing forward a little bit in it there on the front of the tongue. Yeah, it's very, very smooth actually. That's one of the things you'll notice about this guy. Very, very smooth beer. That carbonation isn't coming out very much despite how visible it is, and you can see the head's just dissipating as well with this. But yeah, a very sort of sweet malty beer. The flavour actually comes in quite sharp and then it dissipates quite quickly, but you're getting some nice roasted brown sugars in there, and it mixes well with a nice bready and yeasty background, and just with maybe a little bit of spice in there actually, I would say. But the fruit comes in at the start. The dark fruits, I would say raisins and plums with that. It does have quite a sort of very, very sweet and tarty fruit character to it. A lot of plums and a lot of raisins, I would say. Maybe even some berries as well, actually. It's very, very sweet, actually. But perhaps there is some nutty element to this as well. But the fruits are coming in, giving way to the sort of roasted character with the bread and the nutty elements in there and the roasted malt as well. And the brown sugar's mixed in there. It's a really nice sort of complex malt base to this one. But the fruit's coming in, then you're getting that nice complex malt base in the middle, and the fruit's coming out again. And in the aftertaste as well, I think you're getting a nice little bit of that roasted character just lingering along there with the fruit. Yeah, definitely the fruits and the sort of roasted brown sugary bready character that's lingering in the aftertaste there. This is a really, really nice one, and it is unusual to have the bock for it to have such a kind of tarty sweetness to it. So if you quite like that sort of thing, this is one of your guys to try if you're in Germany around the Christmas period, if you're in the Heidelberg region. In terms of the sort of mouthfeel of this guy, I would say it's sort of mid to full bodied, this one. It's not such an easy drinking beer. It's got a nice oily mouthfeel to it, and I quite like that when it comes to the darker beers. But it is a heavier drinking one, and it's an ideal one just for a winter beer. It's a lot better feel-wise than some of the winter beers that I've actually just reviewed for you recently. A lot of those guys have been Märzens and Pilsner style beers, but this one's a lot more close to what I would expect for a Weihnachts beer or a winter beer from Germany. You're getting just that nice little bit of alcohol warmth from it as well, which obviously you want from a winter beer on the sort of cold winter's nights, of course. But if you're into the winter beers, give this one a try. It's a good example of a nice German craft beer, but they're using other hops outside of Germany as well, so it's a little bit unique in that sense to have something sort of traditionally brewed in Germany with American and New Zealand hops in there as well. But I really like this beer. It was even better on tap than it was in the bottle, of course. I've had this guy sitting for maybe like a week or so, I think, since I got this one, but a really, really nice beer anyway, and I highly recommend that you check out the Kulturbrauerei if you get the chance and you're in Heidelberg, of course. Their Helles beer was one of the best in that style I've ever tried, so I highly recommend you give these guys a go. But I hope you found this beer review informative. I hope the Kulturbrauerei is not one that's a little bit too obscure for you watching from outside of Germany. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please comment on if by chance you have actually tried some of the beer from this brewery. Always interesting to hear what other people think of that, of course. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I'll be back with some more German beer reviews soon. Not quite sure exactly what I'll be doing next, but thanks again for your continued support with my beer reviews, and I'll catch you soon with another one. Cheers.